The 18 Strong Podcast, episode number 270 with Ryan DeGale from Golf and Body. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the 18 Strong Podcast, where we're here to help you build a stronger game because we believe every golfer deserves to play better longer. And this episode with Ryan DeGale from Golf and Body is exactly about that, playing golf for as long as you possibly can. Ryan is the owner and founder of Golf and Body down in Miami, and he is an orthopedic spine specialist. His background is in strength and conditioning, but over the past 17 years has really become an expert in the spine, especially working with golfers. So I like to think of this as being a bit of a master class for especially those golfers that are out there like yourself, possibly like myself, that have struggled with some back pain in the past, and finding ways to really help yourself to eliminate your back pain and really to give you a more optimal and optimistic outlook on what the possibilities are for you to play pain-free golf in the future. Ryan is an expert at really breaking down the anatomy and the physiology of what's going on between the fascia, the muscle, the ligaments. He's got a great Instagram channel where he really dives in and shows different exercises for these different types of exercises and for spine health in general. So you're really going to enjoy this episode with Ryan DeGale. Our partners over at Linksole have been providing us with the best apparel for both on the course and off the course, from polos to t-shirts like the one I have on right now. Everything that they have is meant to be worn from the golf course to wherever you're going next, whether that be casual, whether that be to the beach. There's all different options over there. So go to 18strong.com/Linksole. You'll get 20% off of anything in your cart over on Linksole's website. So again, 18strong.com/Linksole for our favorite brand of apparel for anything on the golf course and off. Now let's get to this week's interview. Ryan DeGale, welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, this will be fun. We've had a couple of conversations. We've tried to do this before and had a couple technical difficulties, so this is going to be fun to finally dig in and get to chat a little bit more. I think that this is going to be a master class on the back, which is what a lot of our golfers need. I know personally myself, even as a physical therapist, just watching a lot of your content, your Instagram, and just kind of learning about what you do, I've learned a ton. And so today what I would love to do is make this very practical for the golfers listening on, what are some of the things that they can do? How can they understand maybe their back a little bit better and the things that they need to do to help prepare themselves? So first of all, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, awesome. So it's good to get it in. Got a little bit of practice before, so looking forward to digging deeper into it and maybe just touch on a few subjects that maybe we didn't touch before. Maybe there's some things I left out that, I could do better this time.
No, all good, man. So let's talk a little bit about your history, though, because you start out in the strength training world, but you are a spine specialist, and you've gone deep and you've learned from some of the best in the world regarding spinal health, and now you especially work with a lot of golfers too. So this is a perfect lineup for what our people need.
Yeah, so I've been a strength coach for 17 years. I've been an orthopedic specialist for 12. I felt like, if you can make the biggest difference, I wanted to, I love niche, right? I'm very nerdy with that kind of stuff. And I kind of got put onto this kind of Guy Voyer rabbit hole where it just literally just never ends. These courses are so awesome and so practical and so useful that you can retake the same course, even the most basic ones, 30 times and learn something new every time. Guy was a former orthopedic surgeon who studied anatomy. He was tired of cadavers, so just became a surgeon so he could study living anatomy, because living anatomy is living. It's different than, with like formaldehyde and all the dead body stuff, So, and then he developed a series of an entire program, not just the L-DOA method, to prevent surgeries. And from his words as a surgeon, he says that 3% of all back surgeries are necessary. And so, it depends, right? So we'll say like maybe non-contact, like disc herniations, or you could have like, I don't want to get too technical, but maybe disc shifting forward or backwards. They call it a retrolisthesis or a spondylolisthesis. And there's a lot of things that we can do for ourselves where we can, it's a self-responsibility thing. And his favorite quote is, "You are your own best therapist." And so I really love that. And so that's pretty much what I teach. I basically teach people to not be codependent so we can get them strong and hitting those bombs. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. So when you say that, and when Guy says that, 3% of back issues are, really necessarily need surgery, what are some of the things that you see people going in for where you're just like, man, if I was able to get my hands on this person, what are some of the diagnoses or what are some of the issues that people go in for that really you feel like, man, if I only had some time with them?
A few millimeters of space with a disc herniation, L5S1. When they have symptoms, like very heavy symptoms, but everything with the tissues in the body, there's really not that much room. So if you create a little bit of lubrication and a little bit of space in the right area, and you're able to restructure the pelvis, create a little more flexibility of the rib cage, and so they're able to play golf. Because most players, after they hit a golf shot, that's when they have back pain. So you need space to decelerate the golf club. You don't get to the top and you drop in pain. It's mostly after the ball. And so just kind of reconditioning things, it's difficult because, the medical industry is really governed by insurance these days, where you have to code. A lot of the programs are coded, and it's difficult for the doctors and therapists where they're kind of at the mercy of the insurance companies of how to treat and this stuff. And so why a lot of people have better with private practice or cash, not everybody can afford it. But, I'm trying to bring some more awareness to that. And, it doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to be right, and it has to be consistent.
And what would you say is kind of the primary driver of that pain that is most typical? Obviously, there's a lot of different things that can go on with the back, but you've got these golfers. You said that a lot of times you see that they have pain as they're finishing their swing. They're getting through contact. What are the typical structures? What are the typical issues that are causing that? Back-wise, hip-wise, shoulder-wise, and what are some of the things that you feel like most guys or girls could prevent this if they had a little bit more knowledge of what they needed to do?
I think just really a specific warm-up, because, if you look in professional sports, you see Steph Curry, he's, doing some drills on the basketball court. You see, when I'm writing a program for somebody who does this game for a living, they're at the gym 30 to 45 minutes, prepping the tissues, getting their nervous system activated, warming up the ligaments correctly and doing all these kind of things in the lower back that are specific to what golfers need, Maybe a few pelvic tilts, some spinal translations, some roll and unroll to the spine, because everybody's so afraid of flexion. But, flexion, we have to, in sport, there is a lot of our flexor chain being used. And so we need to prep the body in that way, where everybody's afraid of doing extensions and flexion. But, we have to train it in a controlled environment so that we can go out there and not have to think about it. And with the L-DOA method, it's basically a French acronym for creating space in a joint segment. And so, you can use your own body weight to decompress your spine and different segments of the spine after your rounds, which is fundamental. And then you go to sleep, and then the tissues will heal at that length, and you'll be able to slowly but surely rehydrate disc. The body, if you give it enough in the right environment with the right tools, it can regenerate. And I've seen it. I've seen it in imaging studies, working with people with severe scoliosis, when they were basically given a ticket of pain for the rest of their life. It's just a management system. There's no cures. It's just a management system. How can I manage, the way I feel every day with the tools I have? And I think that gives people a lot more of empowerment than just being this sort of victim thing, which is unfortunate with the surgeries, pills, and injections. And, it's destroyed a lot of lives, and that's really the truth.
So I'm sure that a lot of people listening, myself included, are thinking, man, this is very refreshing to hear that, it's not a death sentence when you start to have back pain in your 30s or 40s or 50s. And I think a lot of people just kind of assume that either I'm on my way to getting surgery at some point down the line, or I'm going to have to give up golf, or I'm going to have to start to restrict some of my activities.
We are not giving up golf, bro.
Never, right?
Never.
That's it. Forever. You play till you keep swinging forever. But yeah. So regarding looking at the X-rays, the MRIs, the films. So you've actually seen changes in the disc space and the different tissues after going through some of this maintenance stuff.
Yeah, with my clients, and Guy puts up slides with a lot of cases. We've seen cases of some of the most well-known athletes in the world. He's kind of like the guy who works in the shadows and nobody knows about. He is so paranoid about quality control, which I really love him for. I mean, There is some, like Bryce Turner from L-DOA USA. He's the best L-DOA teacher in America. I mean, he's worked with Kansas City Chiefs to the LA Dodgers to any conceivable professional hockey, baseball, you name it. And so, including pro golfers, and you just have to be really careful because precision is key when you're like in the L-DOA world. There's 5 levels. He's creating 6, and even at level 4, there's only probably 100 of us in the world, and so there's only 4 of us in the state of Florida. And so, the supply and demand is not really there. It's kind of you mostly find these techniques through referrals. We're not like Morgan & Morgan have billboards and, all this other stuff going on. You know what I mean? So, I know for a fact that, guys like Woods and Cantlay and, a lot of these other guys have used this method. I mean, Cantlay had the ticket of, he had a misdiagnosed disc fracture, and, there's a lot of different tools, but, sometimes I think it's becoming a lot more popular. And so you got to be a little bit careful, because essentially what you're trying to do, you're trying to create an anchor, and then you're trying to, with different angles of the way you position your limbs, you're creating forces that oppose that anchor. And it takes somebody with a lot of experience. It's not as simple as just kind of downloading a video and doing it right the first time. It's a skill that you have to develop. And you, quite frankly, you can't afford not to have it. I mean, I suffered from back pain. My background is track and field. I did mixed martial arts, Thai boxing, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and that kind of stuff when I took a break from golf. I started at 11, played golf every day for probably 10 years, got burnt out, did the martial arts thing, came back to golf, and, I've been, enjoying it ever since. But, these are a lot of things that we need to take responsibility for, and, and just not, it takes a lot of the fear away, in my opinion, when you have a tool that you're like, okay, I feel this, I have an understanding what it is. And that's kind of what L-DOA practitioners and SOA practitioners teach people how to do.
So can you describe for all of us, especially kind of the in layperson's terms as much as possible, what's actually happening when you're doing some of these L-DOA techniques, and why is it so effective in helping to produce the space, helping to decompress?
So that's a really great question. So everybody's seen the inverted tables, right?
Yep.
So you hang upside down and your ligament system is just hanging upside down. You're creating space that way. Well, what happens like when you go like this, then gravity takes over, and then you're like a slinky. You go back to being decompressed, so you get temporary relief. They look pretty bulky to me. They're not something you just carry in a suitcase, right?
Right.
Say if you're with your boys and you're playing St. Andrews and the links up over there in Turnberry and all that, and you start having back pain, you have your upside down inverted table. You don't. So the L-DOA method is, so without getting too technical, it reconditions. So ligaments connect bone to bone, tendons connect muscle to bone. Fascia is like saran wrap for our body. It creates a structure and it has intelligence, and it communicates with our brain of what's going on as far as length and tension and all this kind of stuff. It's extremely intelligent. And what the L-DOA gives you an opportunity to train all these systems to support that disc in gravity, right? So you're going to war with your tissues for a minute. And so you're actually stretching those tissues, stretching, and you're creating end range of motion with all this stuff. And then when you stop the posture and you consistently do this, that structure is way stronger than it used to be. And so you're able to do things and create space and hold that space and create circulation to get that disc to where it needs to be. And that's what the difference is.
So it's almost like you're creating a space like an inversion table would create it, but you're forcefully doing it. And while you're doing it, you're teaching your body how to support those structures, how to, watching some of your videos online, it's interesting to see how many little muscles are all around the spine. I think most of us don't really visualize that when we think of our backs, that there's so many little muscles, ligaments, tendons, everything that connects all of these different pieces of the back. And so you're helping to train all of those different pieces to basically support it almost like a bridge, like a structure hanging from guide wires.
Yeah, for sure. And the great thing is that the specificity of it. Now, an inverted table is one exercise, right? There's 120 plus L-DOA postures. And so like there's L-DOA postures for the TMJ. I mean, believe it or not, the skull moves. There's biomechanics of the skull that have two L-DOA postures for, which are too technical. I'm not that smart. I use the ones for the SI joint and the spine mostly for golf. The ones for the hips are really important. A lot of people have hip pain, a lot of hip replacements and stuff like that.
You mentioned the fascia and how basically elusive it is, but how important it is. It's around everything in our body pretty much. How important is being able to understand its role in not just our body, but our posture, our athletic ability, even from the standpoint of, swinging faster or moving better? How much does the fascia, and how much are we just now starting to learn about how important it is? Because it seems like before it just kind of used to be thought of as almost like a throwaway tissue or like just the saran wrap that holds us together.
I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. I think Europe is far ahead of America when it comes to studying the connective tissue. Like the people who are the best tissue specialists are in Germany and France. And so they haven't forgot about it. It's mostly that a little bit more towards the American side. The standard of care in America is a lot different paradigm than it is in Europe. It's not that great in Europe either, but it's very it's not very pharmaceutical driven as much. It's not very surgery driven as much. It's not as much cortisone, things like this. They don't make billions and billions of dollars from pain medication. That's mostly an American thing. I mean, it's sometimes people get addicted to pain meds from back issues, and that causes a whole other set of issues. And so the throwaway tissue, yeah, for sure. That's what Guy says. He says that a lot of the American scientists, they basically throw it away and then study the organ systems and everything that we're talking about. But it's there for a reason, and it's almost like it helps disperse energy through the body. It gives us our structure. We don't have structure without fascia. And so, how these guys can jump off of buildings with parkour and all that kind of stuff, and energy is dispersed correctly, and movement disperses energy. Energy is never destroyed; it just changes its form. And so, being elastic in the golf swing, having a good energy absorber, and having normalization to that fascia and training it in its maximal length will train the nervous system, so you're less likely to have tears with ligaments and all this kind of stuff. So you're training that body to almost get ready for being overstretched and having intelligence so you don't have sprains of lower back issues and that kind of stuff.
So are there specific techniques that you use? I mean, obviously we've been talking about the L-DOAs and kind of these 1 minute longer postural type situations, but what about for that explosive reactive stuff, for that, the X factor that you are talking about in your Instagram series, and that whole stretch and contract, and how do we train the tissue for that? Or even a situation, this will ring with a lot of people, that we just saw in the Super Bowl when that football player was running off the sideline to go into the game and tore his Achilles. I assume he tore his Achilles.
Crazy. Yeah, he did tear his Achilles. I was like, yeah, look at that left leg. I mean, we were just talking about that. And so bridges have cable to sway energy. And so in good engineering, everything moves, the earth moves. There's, so you have to sway energy, and that's how our tissues work. As far as that is concerned, I think it's hydration definitely plays a role into that sort of stuff. And also Guy teaches a lot of proprioception and neurological techniques, because ligaments are intelligent. They're constantly communicating with the brain of you've heard of the Golgi tendons and stuff like that. And so there's ways to create, awareness in some of the major, ligaments in the hip for, better awareness, because a lot of the times most people work on the hardware, and don't upgrade the software. I could have a computer that's very powerful, but if I don't have software to tell it what to do, then it's going to be inefficient. And so, with golfers, for instance, if you have issues with trail elbow stuff, there are certain ways to create awareness in the glenohumeral joint or the AC joint, or, making sure that you have enough awareness in certain parts of the elbow. Because, takeaway, and then you have a lot of these different arm structures that players are plagued with, and this and that. And it can be just kind of a case-by-case basis, but that's kind of a general statement for that. So, it goes in cycles. So you want to take what somebody needs in the first cycle. Say if they're extremely tight, they don't have any, they don't have good motor pathways. you want to, regulate that. And then you go into a lot more reinforcement. And reinforcement is so important to stabilize the joint. If you lengthen, you must strengthen, right? And so most people, have no mobility, they strengthen and then they go on speed. And then I just put up a story of a 76-year-old guy who I took through a program, put him on stack system. That guy gained over 10 miles an hour club head speed, dude. That's incredible. Like, he's at 76 years old, swinging at between 96 to 104.
Whoa.
And he started at 89 to 92, I think he said. And so, but he's a general, you put in the work. We barely used any weights. When you get elastic and your brain knows what to do and how to move, it makes the golf instructor's job so much easier, because, these guys have bodies that don't move in front of them, and they have to try and make a golf swing out of that. So it's challenging for them.
Yeah, if you could go a little bit further into that idea of, many of us just kind of strengthen, then we try to throw speed onto it. But you also said if you do end up lengthening, you got to strengthen. Why is that so important, aside from just going and trying to get that extra range of motion or go get more flexible, which is what 90% of the golfers out there think is, I need a bigger turn. I need to stretch more.
Power is nothing without control. And so adding stability, and, if you don't have enough stability for the body, especially in the spine area, then you're more subject to ligament tears, where they overstretch and there's not enough stability to support the joint correctly. And so I've had people who have programs where we do 80% stretching, 20% reinforcement, and you have a little bit of awareness in there. And then I have people that are opposite. I've had there's certain, golfers who are female who are hyper elastic, where we do 80% reinforcement, 20%. I didn't even have them do one stretch, maybe one or two for certain, maybe some internal rotators of the hip and stuff like that. But, we need to stabilize, because that's why they have pain with the same guy who has a symptom where he needs to do the opposite program.
And when you say reinforcement, what exactly do you mean by reinforcement exercises?
Just strength training, for instance, it depends where their weak areas are, but a lot of the time the proximal hamstrings are weak, where you have, your sit bones where the hamstrings originate, and then there's two that goes into the medial part of the knee, one to the outside of the knee. And so, do I want to reinforce? Is this person's knee unstable? There's certain ways to reinforce the fibers that are a little closer to the knee, or the pelvis, where the pelvis has weird things going on, where either it tilts too far forward or it has these sort of motions called torsions that cause issues. Most people think they have a leg length discrepancy where one leg is a little longer than the other, but it's actually a pelvis issue that you need to address. That's pushing one side, forward, and the other one is back. And so, and then they start having issues with plantar fascia, and, their motion and their golf swing is unbalanced, because, if you have a lot of weight on one side compared to the other, it can cause some problems.
Yeah, many times, whatever the area is that they're having the problem with or the pain in isn't necessarily what is really causing that pain.
Yeah, sure. It's a structural balance thing. I think structural balance plays paramount with 80% of, have about an 80% success rate with people with orthopedic problems, mostly back injuries. They're low hanging fruit for me. Back injuries is very, very if they didn't get hit by a bus or fall over from a 2-story building or something, I'm you got a really good chance you could be feeling good. And so I just like the easy cases. And then I'll have more complex cases. I had a client from a guy from Canada who had 20 surgeries. And so he's playing golf pain free. Why can't you?
Yeah. Wow. So what about the golfers that either have back pain or maybe the ones that don't have back pain? Maybe this is an even better question. As far as a maintenance thing, kind of a preventative maintenance thing, what are 1, 2, maybe 3 things that you would recommend? Hey, these are some, like you said, low-hanging fruit things that you can do to maybe prevent it, or, help to really almost eliminate or reduce your chances of having back pain with golf.
I have to realize that there is a world outside of the Florida weather, and there's a lot of people up north that, that it gets cold in the morning and stuff like that. And so I like to put the seat warmers on, and that kind of gets things, something very simple like that is really huge. You don't need sure, we can get into micro specifics, but if you go and you start, if there's a gym or anything like that, or you can get on the stationary bike for a few minutes just to get circulation and heat. Most people use ice, which is a big mistake. You want to get circulation, and you want to move that water and blood around to create anti-inflammatory properties to that area. And so The seat warmers, definitely, getting on the bike and stuff like that. And, I don't want to be biased and say learn L-DOA postures, but, at least have an idea. I'm sure Bryce has a few YouTube videos up that only look at Bryce Turner if you must, okay? Because there are some things in there that he's not happy about, but Bryce is the man with that stuff. I got to be a little careful because we sign NDAs, so I have to be a little bit, I can, do stuff like this, but demonstrating it, he gets a little crazy about that.
Yeah, and like you said, that's the quality control piece, right? That's somebody who has really mastered their craft and doesn't want to kind of bastardize by just people throwing up YouTube videos. And so definitely we'll link up to Bryce's, I guess, YouTube channel if he has it. And I know that like Dan Hellman did a course through TPI that I know a lot of the TPI specialists, if you're a coach, you can go look at that stuff as well. I know you're good friends with Dan and highly recommend working with Dan as well. What about...
Yeah, Dan's awesome. He's actually who put me onto these methods. I took a golf I took a golf mechanic course from him 12 years ago, and I asked him, do I take the red pill or the blue pill? And he told me the red was gi stuff, and so that's what I did.
So what about when you find somebody that, and you mentioned like some scoliosis, or you have somebody that, and I'm kind of speaking about myself, you look at somebody, you look at their posture, maybe on their films, their MRI, their x-rays, you see that their spinal curves are maybe not ideal. Are there ways to change that stuff? And what are kind of the techniques as far as like, obviously we've talked about some of the L-DOA postures, but what about even just like static stretching or static positioning? We've seen some of these different things on Instagram where you're laying over the top of these different devices. Do any of those things work, or how do we go about kind of changing some of that structural positioning?
We're a little bit more in the school of thought with active versus passive techniques. And so, not being reliant on maybe a machine or anything like that. I just took a scoliosis masterclass with Guy last year, and I learned a lot of new things that I didn't know before. But, in a nutshell, you're going to want to be a little bit more into reinforcement, because scoliosis is a rotational disorder. Do you have a C curve, or do you have a functional S curve? How bad is it? Does it affect your breathing because the diaphragm attaches to the spine? Are you, I just had a woman come to me today with lumbar scoliosis, and there's very little spacing on one side of the disc compared to the other. And so, L-DOA postures are awesome for sure, but reinforcement is something you're going to more so want to focus on versus just doing a lot of stretching, because sometimes areas are tight for a reason. And so what you want to try and do is to try and focus on, hey, if I'm really weak on one side, or if you look at somebody with scoliosis, they have substantial more muscle mass on one side of the spine compared to the other, and you want to try and build up, without getting too technical, a little bit more symmetry.
Gotcha. The last time you and I had a chance to talk, we discussed a little bit about global posture stretching, myofascial stretching, L-DOA stretching. What's kind of the differentiation between some of those, and how does that apply for some of the stuff we've been talking about?
So myofascial stretching is putting a chain of connective tissue under tension with a specific area. So if I want to isolate, the biceps femoris, hamstring muscle, I'm going to do certain things. I'm going to put a lot of other areas under tension, including the eyes are important with that, but that's more specific, right? Now, if I want a global postural stretch for, say, the thoracolumbar fascia, which is like the connective tissue from the middle of the spine to the lower back, which is great for my X Factor series, then that's putting a figure 8 of global connective tissue under tension to support the body more in a dynamic manner, in my opinion.
Well, you mentioned the eyes. Why are the eyes so important in some of these?
So the eyes connect to the skin in the brain called the dura mater, which is the fascia of the brain. So the brain is encapsulated by the dura mater. The dura mater has a connection to C0, which has a link to C1. And so if you want maximal fascial tension, the eyes have to be looking low. The crown head has to be pushing to the ceiling, and that puts all the ligament system under tension all the way down to the lower back. For a healthy spine to be healthy, it has to be healthy from C0 to S1. It just has to. And because it's remember the bridge, the cables on the bridge, how it sways energy, that's called tensegrity, right? And so that's how structures disperse energy, and our body is no different.
So what's one of the, well, you mentioned the guy that you've been working with that has had major surgeries. I'm just wondering, what are some of the more serious cases that you've dealt with, and what were some of the things that you had to work on them with? People love hearing stories that they resonate with as far as the pain they've been through and getting back out on the golf course.
Mostly guys, I want to be called the grave digger, because I dig those careers out of the dirt when they think they're dead. And so, cases where professional golfers, you're like, my career is over. I can't do this anymore. I went to X and Y and tried this and that and got this surgery. And I'm never the first person people go to. I'm normally, people say they're the trainer for the PGA Tour, or the stars or the celebrities. I'm like the desperate person trainer, because what I do is not necessarily flamboyant. But it does have a purpose where he teaches you how to be a master of internal forces, where you can pretty much pinpoint where you need to create space. And I've helped players, get very fast in a short amount of time with minimal to no risk, because there's a risk with anything, I just feel like if you must in golf, I like train light, move fast. Mm-hmm. Olympic weightlifting. I know how to Olympic weightlift. I'm actually a CrossFit I worked at a CrossFit gym my early part of my career, and I think there's a lot of good boxes out there too. But I think people overdo heavy and explosive. I don't mind med ball throws. I think the stack system is superior. I'd prefer to work on flexibility, neurological control, and strength, in a safe way. And then you hit the stack up, and then you got no risk.
What have you seen?
They're moving well.
Yeah, what have you seen with some heavy lifting, heavy deadlifts? Have you seen any issues with what that does to the spine itself or other tissues that really have steered you away from that stuff?
I assume everybody has scoliosis. So unless you have somebody who has, I like to get x-rays of every person I train just to have a global view. Now, I have done teaches something called a gravity squat, and there's variations that somewhat look like a front squat. There are some variations that look like a suitcase deadlift, but they're doing certain things with the pelvis and certain techniques with the eyes and the crown of the head that put global tension, and then you're just working the lower body and the lower back. So again, it's the small details that make something that looks almost identical different, and over periods of time that will compound.
When you're looking at golfers and how they stand over the ball, looking at posture, do you feel like there is kind of is there somebody that you look at and you say that tour pro has kind of the quote unquote ideal posture?
Yeah, sure. I think the most important thing is the gravity line. It's basically where our brain thinks where we are in space. So you can take in front of the earlobe, in front of the if you have a side view where you have the earlobe, you have the greater trochanter, where the hip bone is, and then in front of the ankle, they call it the lateral malleoli, and or the midfoot, and a lot of people that I see, their pelvises are out of order, and a lot of their weight shift is on their toes. And so in their golf swings, this makes a lot of motion from heel to toe. You can see this. I have a pressure tracer right there. So, we can actually test for that as well. And, there's, I hate to use the stereotypical thing like early extension, but, that's a cause and effect thing. So, you can be a golf pro and you have your students, you can't figure out why they're having these issues with their pelvis body motion. And it could be because of structural problem, nothing to do with what you're saying. And that's why I like, very good acquaintances with Jim McLean, Chris Como, and Rick Smith. And, I learned from those guys of how they look at the golf swing there's just so much experience and expertise there. And the guys at the top, they always collaborate. And I'm certainly in the collaboration mode.
Yeah, that's got to be cool being able to coordinate with those guys. I know you said you've worked with players that work with those guys. How much interaction do you have as far as when, let's say you're working with somebody that Jim or Chris or one of those guys is working with, and they're working on something specific in their golf swing. How much collaboration is there between you and them as far as the physical and what's going on with the body?
It really depends. You know, the PGA Tour players are, you know, it really depends, right? And so there's certain layers. You know, I've only really, you know, it's a pretty political thing, right? And so like with PGA Tour players, it can be challenging because there's so many different layers of MDs and physical therapists and trainers and stuff like that. Then they're on the range every week and there's people in the air. And so it can be challenging that way. But I mostly I'd step back and take a more consulting role with that. Hey, that may be a great idea. And, you know, this is maybe the routine before, this is the routine after. Hey, maybe they should reinforce their hamstrings a little bit. Maybe they should start working the fibers for the obliques. The obliques are huge because they terminate into the pelvis, and the front of the pelvis manages the mechanics for the sacrum bone. And so, you know, more in that light. And I don't like traveling, you know. And so like this is why I built the studio out. I got a golf course across the street. I can go coach from my sim room. You know, I work 70% remote. So, and then I have an app where, you know, I download, you know, the videos they need to do and that kind of stuff, and more of a consultant.
Let's take a second to thank our sponsors over at First Form. And this week I want to highlight their Formula One post-workout protein shake. I use this thing pretty much every day after my workouts because, let's face it, being here in the gym, working all the time with clients, putting on a podcast, it can sometimes be tough to get my protein in on a regular basis. And so I know that with the post-workout shake, the Formula One, first of all, it's fast acting. So right after your workout is a great time to get your protein in to help build your muscles, get yourself stronger, and repair what you've done in the gym. But also, if you don't know if you're gonna be able to get your protein in your regular meals, it's just a great way to make sure that you're supplementing and hitting those marks. So be sure to go over to firstform.com/18strong to get your First Form Formula One protein shake. And everyone that enters through that link is gonna be put into a drawing every single month for free First Form products. So again, go over to firstform.com/18strong.
What are things that you think most golfers should be doing in their training sessions, in their workouts, that you kind of feel like it's being missed by? And let's talk a little bit more like not the professional golfers that have a team around them, but let's talk about the guys that are going out, they're playing with their club, they're competitive guys, maybe wanting to go win a club championship, but they're kind of doing
some of those guys.
Yeah. So like, yep. What are the big things that they're missing when they go to the gym? Or maybe after the rounds or before the rounds.
I think intent, I don't think like exercises, they all do something, but what timing is it and what is it for and where is it in a program? Because exercises are just exercises until you build up programs and systems, and then there's execution behind that. And so like, you know, the greatest program with somebody who doesn't have the intent or the consistency will be outperformed by somebody with a mediocre. It's a not so great program with great attitude and consistency. And so it depends. There has to be like a blend between those two. But to answer your question, I feel like I think the assessment process, maybe there. I like specifics. Like I can't think too generally, but I like, you know, I'd probably say a little bit more paramount on mobility and stuff like that. I'm taking less risk with certain things that they're doing. I'm not a huge fan of long distance cardio whatsoever for golf. I think it just completely wrecks your knees, creates plantar fasciitis, and, you know, breeds hip replacements. But sometimes you need to give those guys a little, you know, put them on some interval training, get things going, because, you know, they're not on the PGA Tour and they don't need to. There's a cardiac component to that that's super healthy. And so, you know, you blend it up. Me, I work out 5 days a week and I don't only train for golf. You know, I like movement. I push the sled around for sure. But would I necessarily have, you know, somebody who has, you know, it just depends on this case, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think that's kind of where a lot of our listeners fall. That's where I personally fall too, much like yourself. Like, you know, getting in and trying to do some sort of training or working out or exercise almost most days, whether that even just be going for long walks or so. Everything is not about golf. And you and I have talked about the importance of longevity and just itself, right? But knowing that there's
muscle mass is incredibly important, but we don't want it to slow you down like in your golf. If you want to, you know, like I had a guy I just signed up yesterday from upstate New York. He's a +3. He's 40 years old, works on Wall Street, and he's a club champion at Quaker Ridge. And he's like, Brian, I don't care about looking good. I know if I eat well, I just want to hit these high nasty bombs and beat these young kids' asses. I was like, okay, let's rock. All right, let's do that. You know, let's do it. And then I have another guy who's just like, look, I want to look pretty. You know, I don't really feel great about myself. I want to, get some of my, And the great thing is that most of these posture imbalances, you need a hell of a lot of ab work. So, nature doesn't false advertise. Normally, if you have strong abs, it will show, and things like that.
So, let's talk a little bit just about the quote-unquote core, right? We hear how important the core is, and you're mentioning the strengthening of the abs. What are some of the ways that you have found to be most effective to really train and stabilize and reinforce, as the word you've used so many times, reinforce our core? And how do you define the core?
Multiple layers, different fascial directions, breathing techniques, and many kinds. But I like we know ab exercises for almost anything you can think of. I mean, he even created a GI series, dude. There's ab techniques that create pumping through each segment of the colon to the precise area, corners, everything you think of, right? We talked about the diaphragm only for 30 hours. And so I consider the diaphragm a part of the core. I consider the spinal rectors with the longissimus, ilicostalis, and transverse spinalis all layers of the core, especially the internal obliques. I think you get most bang for your buck from working the obliques, man, because, they connect rib cage, pelvis, sternum, you name it. They all have, it's all a piece, and there's different layers to all this kind of stuff. And so, we know how to, I think he spent 3 days only on the TVA. You know what I mean? So, I think the abs are very misunderstood. And I used to be a part of this school of thought where I felt like if I deadlifted, squatted, and I was doing all the different things that will include the abs, and then I'd work on my abs, and I'm like, shit, these guys are weak. What's going on? I can deadlift. I've deadlifted, when I was doing mixed martial arts, I deadlifted 485 with no belts or strap at maybe 165 pounds. I was really strong, but I was just like, I can't even do like roll and unroll general sit-ups for like 40, 50 reps. What's that all about?
Right.
And so, so there's something, if you look at Pascal's law, is basically when we're talking about, I think, did you bring out McKenzie, or was that another interview?
I didn't, but go ahead.
Okay, so you have many kinds of herniations. You can herniate a disc, in the front of the disc, the side, the posterior, and there's subsectors to that. And so, the school of thought is that if you do inflection all the time, then that can herniate a disc with the posterior part, which, you could also, for instance, if I put, Pascal's law is the physics of water and how water works. And we have to understand this because most of our body is made of water, and the spacing between the discs are, it's synovial fluid, right? And so we need to train our abs to be complete, to do certain things, because look, a golf swing, right? You have, you're in this position, right? You're right here, it's bend flexion, and you're doing there's a lot of flexion going on right here. And, with these different torsions. And so I think we need to train those abs, especially in the flexor chain, carefully, understand who's in front of you, but we need to reintroduce that. I think, these sort of studies were done in 1973 on 6 college students, and it was never refuted, any of the research, because we asked about this during abs class because we have a ton of physios in there. So naturally they're going to ask like, hey, what's the deal? And so, to answer your question there, the obliques are your biggest bang for your buck. I don't really use a ton of cable machines. I have like the K-box a little bit that I use for, the eccentric training or deceleration training. But I think we get just getting very, strengthening the abs with your body weight, and then going to the golf course. And because we don't need to do too many things that look like a golf swing in the gym, from my experience. So
what do some of those strengthening exercises for your oblique, not that we're going to be doing demonstrations, but are we talking like some side planks, some rotation and planking positions, just to give people a little bit of an idea?
I love planks, man. Yeah, I think anybody, even with back pain, if their back pain is below a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10 for symptoms, they can make sure they tuck their pelvis and they're pushing away. And there's so many things you can do with a plank that is really awesome because the ground is immovable. So if I want to factor progression, I don't like planks that last more than 30 seconds. That means you're not pushing hard enough, right? So you're pushing away. That means you get all the rib cage and the serratus muscles that attach to the scapula. You can take your elbows, you can bring them into the floor. That activates the upper abs. And then you got a pelvic tilt that actually my ebook all has this. I just wrote an ebook. It's called Stay in the Game. It's called Stay in the Game. How to gain confidence and speed coming back from a back injury. And I have some stuff in there. And so when you tuck underneath, you get a lot of the lower ab fibers. And so like that's complete. You're not doing anything crazy. There's not a lot of, and if you have back pain and play it safe that way, that's totally cool.
I feel like the big takeaway from a lot of what you're educating us on is really the intention of it, right? You don't have to lift a bunch of weight. You can do, all of this, most of this is just simply body weight and getting in a position.
Yeah.
But understanding what the intention is, where you're trying to feel it, where you're trying to push and move and pull. And it's those little connections from the brain to those muscles, tendons, ligaments that really are going to make the most benefit and make the difference.
And it's something somebody can do, like, what's the number one complaint? It's time. It doesn't require, like, a ton of time. I've had people be like, I did 40 minutes of homework today. I'm like, why? You sound inefficient. Like, how much rest are you taking in between? I told you to do 4 things with a minute rest in between for 3 to 4 sets. How'd that take you 40 minutes? Do you feel like you can do that for 20 years every day? No. So, like, why are you doing it like that? Now, if you're on the LPGA or PGA Tour, I'm like, you better friggin' do that because it's your job. You have a multi-million-dollar spine. But for, Jack and Jill, accountant and attorney, they, what that's not sustainable.
Yeah. You could
efficiency, dude.
Yeah. You could do these things sitting at your desk and then eat lunch and then get back to your desk in, 30 minutes, whatever it is.
It's great that you said that. I have a guy who runs a fund over in Michigan. He's like a +1. He plays in state tournaments and stuff. He's doing, rotator cuff stretches in his office because that's when he has most of his time. He walks around his thing. Of course, he has his putter and, he's there straight. Yeah. You know how it is.
Yep.
So it doesn't have to be structured per se. It just has to be consistent.
All right. Last thing before we jump into our final questions here. Foam rolling. We've talked about fascia. We've talked about the tissue. What about all these self-myofascial tools and things like that?
Okay. I don't like them. And this is just my opinion. I've been approached by probably 5 or 6 companies a month through Instagram to promote their products. And I was like, I'm sorry, I don't use it in my practice. Like, it would not come off genuine. If I'm collaborating with a product or a person and stuff like that, I believe what they do. And, I just can't associate myself. So one thing Guy noticed, right, with connected tissue, and there's also a lot of other good literature. I have a few books over here. If I could just go hold them up for maybe some of the physios or trainers out there who want to, take a deep dive into anatomy. And so pressure, very sensitive to pressure, because the connected tissue, like this is why an amazing massage therapist is so important to be careful of who works on your tissues, right? Because pressure changes, listening to the body, that takes a lot of time and experience to acquire. And so, like, most people have no understanding of the direction of the fascia in which you need to pump, right? Because everything is like a lymphatic system, right? Mm-hmm. Most people destroy their TFL and their IT band anyways, and then they crush their quads. I've seen in CrossFit gyms they use PVC pipes and all this crazy stuff. And so, like, fascia wants to be hydrated and it wants to have length and freedom. And that's what it needs. And so this is why, in my opinion, the GPS, the L-DOA, and the myofascial stretching are superior because you're using your own tissues and there's global pressure throughout the entire chain when you're in a posture where you don't create inflammation. And that's not an opinion. I mean, Dan did a great presentation at the World Golf Fitness Summit on why he doesn't like foam rollers either. So that's, maybe I'm biased, but I really trust Guy, and he's a lot smarter than me, and he's a lot smarter than Dan. So, yeah.
Well, that's why we have individuals like you on here, because you guys have so much depth of knowledge, and Dan and some of the other people that have come on, and you know, the video that I think Guy has about the tissue and fascia, for me, that really kind of showed how, you know, how sensitive that tissue is. I don't even know if you remember the name of the video, or you know the video that I'm referencing, but I think it was maybe Dan that had turned me on to, and it actually looked like under the surface of the skin at the tissue that was.
Yeah. John George, I think. No, John George. Sorry, that's a chef. I'll have to check the author. Yeah, I mean, I think I have maybe around 1,200 hours of with Guy. I've spent about 1,200 hours with him. So,
wow.
He's awesome. And then there's some other, you know, like Bryce is great for L-DOA. You know, and these are tools that are so fundamental to helping your clients. I mean, geez, you know, you can really make a difference in somebody's quality of life with this stuff. And it does make a huge difference.
Did you want to go grab those books that you mentioned? Yeah, we'll pop them up on the screen.
Yeah, here's a few of them. There's a couple. I really like nectars for other stuff, you know, because I'm a picture boy.
Yeah.
And Grey's Anatomy 1908 edition is a little bit too old English for me. But here's one of them. All right, this is probably the one that you're talking about.
Okay, yep. Architecture of Human Living Fascia.
Yeah, and so it basically goes through the structures and, you know, how delicate things are. I mean, hopefully people don't have you know, there's a lot of anatomy in there.
Yeah, this is for all the coaches and medical professionals on the line.
So, you know, and so, you know, also with this, you know, it goes through different fascial slings and relationships and stuff like that I think is, you know, if you want to do things at a very high level, is it okay if I show a dead body?
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So stuff like that, you need to know where the direction of fibers are. And, you know, when you become a structure of dispersion correctly, you're less than likely to have these major hip problems.
Awesome. Well, so that last text that you just showed, is that where you get some of the images that you're putting on your Instagram as of recently?
No, I don't. That's from Jason. He's a sports chiro I just took a pelvis biomechanics course. I've taken that course 6 or 7 times because, again, I still have another 28 to go before everything is clear.
Awesome. So for those of you listening, go check out Ryan's Instagram, which is, it's golf_and_body, right, Ryan?
Yeah.
Go check that out. He does some amazing videos. He gets very detailed on some of the anatomy and then goes and shows a lot of different exercises. He's doing a great series right now on the X Factor. So by all means, go check that out. Is that the best place for them to go and kind of follow what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm starting to bring up my Facebook presence. You know, there's a lot of golfers on Facebook, especially with older guys, you know, that haven't transitioned to the Instagram over there. Yeah, so the first 5-part series is 15 videos in which, you know, the first 5, I'm showing you stretches to create freedom, where you need to create freedom, because the X factor is essentially the measurement between how far the pelvis turns backwards and how far your ribcage can turn over that pelvis. Okay, and so the more explosive players like Gordon Sargent and Roy McIlroy and these guys, they have just the most amazing difference between those two. So the average tour player has a 42-degree X factor. So if your hips turn 48 degrees and your shoulders turn 90, that means you have 42. Roy has over 63.
Wow.
So he's getting like probably 105 to 10 degrees of shoulder turn with X, whatever that is, you know, minus what his hip turn is. And so this acts like a coil. And so when good players, they start turning their pelvis towards the target, even sometimes before they finish their backswing. And this creates a stretch. So you actually have more of a stretch with the X factor that way. And if you can't do that in a controlled environment and have free tissues there, I just never understood how you could do that with 120 miles an hour or even 100 miles an hour for that matter. So the next 5 videos would be 5 neurological things. Now we have all this extra space. We can now focus on major areas of the hip that our brain needs to learn how to use. And then, of course, we got the reinforcement and strength of the last 5. Hey, how do I have all this now that I don't hurt myself? Now that I have to be strong, too, for golf.
Perfect. And so that's you said a 15 video sequence that'll be coming out.
Yep. I'm on video 4 right now. I filmed 10 already, so I just need to do the reinforcement section.
Awesome. All right, my man. Let's finish up with our End of the segment questions, which you know
My favorite part.
First one, Caddyshack or Happy Gilmore?
Caddyshack used to be a member at Grand Oaks where they filmed it.
That's right. I forgot you had that connection.
Ronnie Dangerfield, man. I mean, I don't know how, like, that guy is an absolute legend, you know? I mean, there's more quotes from that movie than, certainly more than Gilmore, for sure, right?
There's quite a few from Gilmore, but I personally quote Caddyshack almost every day.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, what's your walk-up song, if you can pick a walk-up song to the first tee?
Oh, man. That's a really good question. You know, I may not look like a fighter, but my walk-up song, I have had 5 mixed martial art fights, was 50 Cent Mini Mint.
Nice.
Yeah. I like 50.
All right, is there a book that you would recommend to the 18 Strong crew? And this could be fitness, golf, this could be anything in life that it has meant a lot to you or that you tend to give out as a gift to people.
I think that's the most difficult question because I love to read. You know, I thought one of the most interesting books that nobody talks about is Nutrition and Physical Degeneration by Weston A. Price, who was a dentist and a medical a nutrition researcher in the 1920s, in which his research is buried because the American Medical Association didn't like what they funded, what the results were. Back in those days, most people had crowding of the teeth, where they had narrow jaws and deviated septums, and you know you'll notice this actually is conducive to processed foods, processed sugar. They had issues with tuberculosis back then, and stuff like that, and we're way more healthy back in those days than now, right? I mean, we're so lucky we have modern medicine because there'd be people dropping like flies out there. Because now more than ever, we need to self-educate, man. You can't, it's hard to trust sources these days because it's funded, like Hoffman LaRoche funded the first dietary, program in colleges to teach dietitians how to sell processed food from the Food Guide Pyramid.
Crazy.
Because if you like the Food Guide Pyramid, then you look like a pyramid, and then you become diabetic, and then they get you a medication, and then you can't sleep, and then you get a medication, and then your back hurts because you're overweight, and then you get a medication, and that's called an annuity for life. I mean, good business for them, not so much for the public, right? I was a clinical nutritionist for 10 years. I ran medical labs. I decided to focus only on orthopedics because, I wanted to be the best I possibly could, and I enjoyed the orthopedics more.
Great suggestion. Definitely have to check that out.
Yeah, there's plenty of teeth like pictures, and this is important because our dental health is closely related to our biochemistry in our body. So if you're getting cavities or something seriously wrong with your biochemistry, so he would compare primitivized diets to modernized diets, and the difference was whole foods and animal fats and proteins. So all this low fat propaganda, all this like villainizing saturated fats, get into soy, get into vegetable oil. All that is just marketing to get you, it's to scare you into buying their products. And that's the truth. And most people know this now, but they didn't even know this 10 years ago. Like I had a lot of backlash. They're like, are you serious? My doctor told me you're going to kill me. I was like, what? Because they only get 8 hours of basic nutrition and they had 8 or 9 years they go to medical school. And that's all for Food Guide Pyramid. And so, you can't compete with doctor's word. Like, so the orthopedics is a natural stepping step.
Crazy.
Yeah.
All right. Who would be in your dream celebrity foursome? If you got to pick a foursome of anybody in the world, past or present, who are you taking?
I'm a big F1 fan. I like Ayrton Senna. I know a lot of F1 golfers do play golf, but Ayrton, maybe I didn't even care if he's a 30 handicapper. It'd be cool to pick his brain. Of course, Tiger Woods, because he's transcended the game. And the last one, man, I mean, it may sound cliche, but Arnie, because he made golf cool. And I'm a huge believer in making it accessible to as many people as possible versus being kind of a little bit more of an elitist thing, because what golf has taught me since I've been playing since I was 11, everything was free for me. There was a guy in Barbados called Denny Foster who put a club in my hand, and this opened so many doors for me. I mean, the seat time I get and who I can network with because of this game is it's a joke. And, kind of pretty made me who I am today, having access to that versus maybe 20, 30 years ago, it wasn't like that. So I like guys like Eastside Golf that wear some of their, their hoodies and apparel because, it's cool. Make it cool, wear the J's or the Dunks or whatever, and just make golf cool, That's why Anthony Kim was so popular. He had those huge belt buckles, flamboyant. I just feel like guys these days, they're a little bit too, they're robotic, and sure, there's a lot at stake, but, it's an entertainment sport, maybe this is why Good is getting some more views than PGA Tour events now. I mean, I was watching the match the other day. I was like, it's a little bit boring. I'm going to turn on Good and watch Michael Torbjorn's son hit bombs and talk about his injuries. And Rory was on TV. I'm sorry, but I mean, we want to be entertained, and I feel I've been to a few live events since I was a member at Durrell. I think they're really close to having the right product. They need to go to 72 holes. I don't like the music in between, and the shotgun starts. They get all that, and then they have a killer product, dude. And I think that's where the game's gonna be going to. Yeah,
we haven't had one around here that I know of yet, and so I'd definitely be interested in checking it out and seeing what the vibe is. I know the people are on one side of the fence or the other, really, but I'd definitely be interested in checking it out.
Yeah, shotgun starts don't make sense to me because they, they're supposed to be ebbs and flow golf course architecture.
Yeah,
agreed. And these guys don't care. These old guys don't care about playing. They're on my two TVs. They're playing Asian Tour events for world ranking points all the time. It's not for Let's Golf. Add a round, get the world ranking points, and get rid of that stupid shotgun start, and and just dominate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. It's interesting to see. I mean, now with Rahm going over there and rumors of some other people maybe heading that way, it'll be these next couple of years are going to be. I can't wait to see this Netflix series that just came out to see some of the behind the scenes of all of that stuff.
Yeah, it should be interesting. Did you see the Rahm dinner reservation card? How the past champion, the champion from last year did. I think what do you say? Meet the PGA Tour players kindly meet on the 18th green at 6 p.m.
Yeah, so that came out last year on, I think it was Scheffler's. I don't know if those. I can't tell if that was a joke. If I've heard some people say that wasn't a real deal and that they just redid it for Rahm's this year. So I don't know, but either way, I thought it was funny.
It suits Rahm way better right now. He's probably going to fly there on his personal helicopter when he's there now.
No kidding. Yeah, that'll be interesting to watch. All right, so you've got the F1 driver, you've got Tiger, you've got Arnie, the king. If we had the 18 Strong Jet and we could take you anywhere in the world, what's your bucket list course that you're going to with these guys?
Gosh, of course Augusta, but Pond Valley would be nice to go to. Not because these memories still need to take me.
Yeah, that's definitely on the list over here. I believe you said you've got a client named Jim. I've got a client named Jim, both members of Pine Valley. I think we need to get on the two gyms and get down there. All right, what's the best piece of golf advice you've ever been given?
Bernie Els was hitting bunker shots, and I walked over to him. I said, "Hey, I don't want to bother you. How are you so fluid? You're so big and stuff like that. Be easy." He said, "Just wait on it, because most of the swing flaws are due to improper sequencing. And sometimes less is more in this game. And so just be a little bit more patient." It helped me because I was quick and hitting some low lefters, and after that I was hitting some high draws, low spin. It was pretty amazing because I have a lot of speed, and so if there's like some things that are a little bit off, or you're a little quick, get ugly real quick.
Hard to argue with anything that Big Earn says.
Yeah, he's a stud. I mean, it's crazy what he was able to do back when the Tiger era, huh? Mm-hmm. I mean, how do you win that many times when Wood was at his peak, dude? And same thing with Mickelson. I mean, he's not exactly as popular as he used to be, but you got to respect, what he was doing.
Totally. All right, my man. Last one. Is there a social media account that you follow? Obviously, your Instagram is blowing up, and I always like to get an idea of what are some of the other accounts out there that people like yourself are watching, paying attention to, that the 18 Strong crew can benefit from.
I'm a really big fan of personal development and mindset. I really think that Alex Hormozzi is the king of practical application and mindset, because it can be really difficult out there, guys, and it's especially with everything going on in AI, if you have a job that may be at risk for this sort of stuff, you got to be able to adapt and create value. And I really like that. This is why I decided to come out the shadows and start, I was like, I need to go and come out in the real world. I'm going to start a YouTube channel. And I thought it was about a year ago that I decided to do this. And so, I'm going to just basically have an online business with, some in person, of course, but mostly online.
Well, you've taken it and you've run with it. So whatever you're doing, it's working, my man.
Appreciate it, man. It was awesome to, thanks for having me on the show. I mean, I could talk about golf and this stuff like for another 10 hours. So I appreciate you letting me babble.
Yeah, man. Well, let's continue this conversation down at Pine Valley. How about that?
I love that. Call Jimbo's up.
You got it. All right, Ryan, really appreciate you coming on. Everybody go check out Ryan over on Instagram, golf_and_body. Tons and tons of great information. Go on over there, check it out. And Ryan, can't thank you enough again for coming on.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast. And if you found this episode helpful, don't forget to share with your friends. And of course, go follow us over on Instagram at 18 Strong. Thanks again. We'll catch up with you next week. Train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.